Hi guys, hi friends. Let's try to understand what could be the plausible reasons that how humans tried to read, how humans learned, how humans got trained, and actually how humans uh, start reading the nature itself, the nature of reality. And to go with this argument, imagine a child standing under the night sky, say, for example, 10,000 years ago. The child looks at the stars and asks, what are those lights? The child sees thunder in the sky and he asks, why? Why does Why does the sky roar? The child, the child watches a seed becoming a tree, and then asks, how can something so small become something so large? So, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the human history. Human history is in many ways the history of these questions. Civilizations, civilizations rose and fell. Empires, the empires appeared and then disappeared as if they never existed in the present moment. Languages were born, and most of the languages vanished. Yet one thing remained constant. We can we can we can assume that one thing remained constant. And what was that one thing? That one thing is human curiosity. The story of science is, it's not merely a story of laboratories out there. It's not about the equations. It's not about the experiments that the pupil perform in the laboratories. It's the story of how human beings gradually, slowly learned to read nature. And and I always feel as if nature was always talking, nature was always speaking. The stars out there in the sky, these stars were speaking. The rivers that once moved over the planet, they were always speaking. The mountains, they were always speaking. The atoms which we consider as the building blocks of the matter, these atoms were always speaking. So we can move from atoms, the living cells. The living cells were always talking, speaking, expressing. The universe as a whole was speaking. The only challenge was there. The challenge was that humanity did not yet understand. It failed to understand the language of all these things that I talked about. And today I'm going to talk about it. I want you to be the part of it. I want you to be the part of this journey through this extraordinary story. A story of wonder. I may call it a story of questions, a story of discoveries, a story that belongs to every one of us, a story that is a signature for every one of us. And I may start with the book, the first book that was written. It was without words. What am I trying to tell here is that before books existed, there was already a book. And what was that book? That book was nature itself. The nature was an open book. And ancient humans, they had no universities, they had no laboratories, they had no equipments that they could use like the way that we are using right now. They had no internet. They had no telescopes. They had no microscopes. They did not know even how to write. But still, and I should say, and yet they possessed something powerful. And what was that powerful thing that they have had? It was observation. What they did basically is they noticed that seasons, they repeat. They noticed that sun rises from the east, and these were the observations. They noticed that rivers, they follow certain patterns when they fall from mountains. They noticed that the plants, they grow from seeds. They were noticing all of these things over a long period of time, from generations to generations. So we can say observation became humanity's first classroom. This was the first classroom situation for the humans on this planet. And nature itself became humanity's first teacher. I mean, in many ways, science began the moment a human being stopped merely looking and then started wondering. One is that you're looking, that's okay. But then you are acting, you are wondering for it. And the famous apple story always comes in action, what we call as the falling apple. Now let's imagine there's an orchard of trees. And what's happening? An apple is falling. Millions of apples had fallen before from the trees. And millions of people had observed. Millions of people had seen them fall. But one person, the one chosen asked a different question. And the question was, why downwards? Why not upwards? One among millions of the people who were watching apples fall from the trees. And why so straight? Why not sideways? And that equation eventually led to the understanding of gravity. Gravity. And everybody knows gravity. When we talk about gravity, you have Galileo, you have Isaac Newton. The lesson is profound. So scientific discovery often begins not with intelligence alone. It begins with the question. It begins with noticing something familiar and asking an unfamiliar question. A question that is raised by one out of thousands, out of millions. The language. If I talk about physics, the language of physics. If nature, I may call, is a book, physics is one of the languages used to read it. Nature itself is an open book. And certainly physics seeks answers to question to question the things, the events that happen in nature, like what's motion, like what's energy, what's matter. These are the questions, and maybe what's light. So it doesn't end. It goes on and on. It talks about time. It talks about space. What is space? What is time? And when a planet moves around a star, physics is present. The physics is going on. The star is moving. It's moving using the equations of general theory of relativity. When a football ball travels through the air, the physics is present. When electricity powers our homes, your homes, physics is present. You cannot separate